What I am going to do now is turn the final part of this pop-up over to one of our keynote speakers. We're exceptionally honored to have Chris Rowe, Mr. Chris Rowe, from the California STEM Learning Network here with us for the entirety of the day. Chris Rowe received his undergraduate BS in Agricultural Economics from the University of Wisconsin. He moved out to the Bay Area and formed the Pacific Education Group and the Foundation for College Education, which is an East Palo Alto effort to help underrepresented groups perform and enter into college. He then was at the Stanford Institute for Higher Education Research. It's the managing director for the National Center for Post-Secondary Improvement, before moving out to Washington, D.C., where it's a lot more muggy, to run and serve as the deputy director of the Business Higher Education Forum, which is a partnership of business, higher education, looking at education issues. We are very delighted to have him now in back to California, as the CEO of the California STEM Learning Network, which I'll leave to Chris to describe more, but this is actually a really exciting effort in the entire state of California to direct STEM efforts in a coordinated fashion across the entire state. So we wanted him to provide his input of what he's doing on the Central Coast today, and in California in general. So Chris Rowe.
I'm really pleased to be here, and I wanted to start out by just thanking John and the planning committee for the great work you've done in putting this all together, and also to the County Office of Education for having us at this beautiful facility today. For me, this is actually really fun, and I feel like I'm coming home. I was raised on a dairy farm in Wisconsin, if you may have noted from my resume. So I know that this area of the state, at one point, I hear it doesn't have as many anymore, had a lot of dairy farms. But when I was an undergraduate at the University of Wisconsin, we used to compete with Cal Poly in a lot of different events. So it's actually one of the reasons why I ended up coming to California, is because I became so enamored with Cal Poly and as a student that I came out to visit, and the rest is history in terms of how I made it to California. But I am pleased to be back after spending 7 years in Washington, D.C., working with business leaders and educators to really promote education policies that can advance our country and our country's competitiveness. And one of the major initiatives that I was working with was our STEM initiative, and really trying to figure out systemically how we can drive policy changes, but also programmatic changes around the country. I've come back to California. I'm very pleased to be here, and in some ways this is a little bit of a full circle as well, because CSLNet, as some of you may know, had its initial birth, I guess you could say, right here. I don't know if it was in this very room, but right here in the Central Coast. And there was some seed money about 3 years ago that was given by the Gates Foundation to a group of very interested people in STEM education. And it was based here at Cal Poly under President Baker's leadership, and I see Dan Howard Green is here today too, who played a very key role in helping getting that going. And I know a lot of the very early planning work that is now coming to fruition some 2 to 3 years later really was laid right here in the Central Coast. But just a little bit of background about CSLNet, as we call it. We have to have an acronym like everybody else. It is a statewide effort, and imagine what we just heard in this room, in one county within 1 hour. Take that and multiply it by 58 times around the state of California. And that's what you have in terms of resources. So there is a huge amount of resources. The energy in this room is palpable this morning. It's exciting. But we need to have better coordination. We need to have better access to resources. And we need to be working together across regions and across the state. So what we're doing right now is going around and trying to work with interested and committed groups of individual stakeholders, diverse groups of stakeholders that include the entire spectrum, not just one group. It can't be just the educators that are responsible. It can't be just the business community that's going to be driving the change. We need accountability structures that involve all of the key stakeholder groups. And we're trying to work to develop regional alliances that will then work together across the state. So each regional group, we expect, will have different themes and different issues And that's the beauty of having regional diversity. So what the group in Orange County may be focusing on may be slightly different than the group in Sacramento, or hopefully the group in the Central Coast. What we're hoping to do as a network is to provide resources to help you in your planning process, and also then to connect you to other groups around the state. And I've been traveling around the state. I've only been here a little over 8 weeks. I've traveled up and down the state now several times. There is tremendous work being done in the state, but there's also a lot of duplication. There's a lot of trying to recreate the wheel. I go from one meeting in one county to the next, and somebody is struggling with a problem that the last county has just solved, or at least has dealt with over a certain year period of time. So just being able to connect resources, to aggregate resources, to share out resources, what you just did here, is tremendous. And we hope to be able to provide a statewide network that can both aggregate up what's going on at the regional level, and also to provide a policy and advocacy and outreach voice. So the question about what is STEM. 2 years ago in Washington, D.C., when I told people I was working on STEM education, people looked at me like I was crazy, or they assumed it was stem cell research. Today, when I go out and talk to people, not everybody knows what it is, but I run into people on planes or in the grocery store, and I explain it's science, technology. Oh yeah, I get it. I know what you're talking about. So we've come a long ways, but we have a long ways to go. And right now is a very dynamic time. We are part of California is part of a larger national network. So imagine what you're doing here, multiply that across 25 states that are also trying to do the same thing. Some of them are using regional approaches, some of them are trying to build STEM schools. We've taken an approach that looks kind of at both. But you can see there's tremendous energy around the nation to really advance this effort. And we're at a dramatic time in time of our education system, and the change that's coming, Common Core Standards, Common Assessments, new NAEP requirements. These are all the kinds of policy issues that we hope to be surfacing and creating a platform and a voice for the people that are working here on the ground, that are really driving and working with students every single day. So that's a little bit about what we're doing. I'm going to come back and talk a little bit more at the end of the day. Just a little reflection. I am really struck by the diversity of the types of efforts in this room. I would love to see more businesses here, and I'd love to challenge every business that's here in this area to really think about how they can get involved. Not every business has to do something as elaborate as what you're doing or what PG&E is doing, but there are ways to connect into ongoing work that's going on, and Marcella gave already a great sales pitch in terms of the after-school network. Our organization is trying to surface statewide issues that are of concern to all the stakeholders. And one of them is using the after-school time in addition to the in-school time. We know in-school time is important, but students have very limited time because of curricular accountability systems. Science is oftentimes squeezed out of schools, as Patty's laughing here. She understands that very well. We have to do a better job about leveraging out-of-school time. We have a tremendous resource and asset in the state through that network and those state and federal dollars as well that can leverage the type of work that's being done. So there are great ways to connect in. What we're hoping to do is to make connections to provide additional ideas and resources to everybody here. So thank you for inviting me today. I'm really excited to be here.
And you will be speaking later on.
Yes, so I'm going to come back at the end of the day and talk a little bit more about, I guess, some of the reflections. I will say that we are, right now, we're working with a few different groups that are actually in a very similar place to where you all are. They've gathered together the right stakeholders. They're beginning to think about how to plan, to build a plan, how they will measure their success as an effort. And this is one of the critical questions that we've had as a group now of regional alliances that are working together. How do we define and measure success? Is that around achievement levels? Is it around participation levels? Is it around closing the achievement gaps that exists in certain areas? So we'll be talking more about that, but I'm interested and excited to see how your discussions proceed during the day, and to come back a little bit later in the afternoon and we can talk some more.
As promised, Chris Rowe has come from San Francisco to join us today to give reflections upon what he's heard today of this group with our 4 hours of working together, and also casting in the light of what's happening statewide, what's happening in the entire state of California, as well as nationally, and opportunities that we might be able to leverage off of and partner with. So again, Chris Rowe from the CSLNet.
An honor to be here today. It's been a lot of fun, and I can tell you what happened today is happening all around the state. Just to see the energy and the ideas in this room is pretty phenomenal. Just taking a look around at all the different ideas. Many of these things are already happening in other areas of the state, which is really exciting. So know that you're not alone, and one of the goals of the network is to actually build the capacity of a statewide network to actually implement these ideas, think through these ideas, grapple with some of these challenges and solutions. I did want to just talk briefly a little bit about the other two major goals, because I wanted to push the group a little bit, and I know this today was really to think about and brainstorm ideas and get energy. But we have set out as two major goals for the overall effort is to really advance student interest and proficiency in STEM disciplines K-14. So that's an overall goal of the network. And that's for all students in the state. So our goal is to reach as many students as possible. So that's an overall goal of the network. And the other goal that really goes hand in hand with that is that we want to ensure that when students leave high school and they go on to post-secondary education, that they are ready for college and career. So they can go on to that next level without remediation. And I know that schools are working on that, but I just wanted to put that out as a goal because I think the two go hand in hand. I also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the design principles that, as we work with other regions, the kinds of things that we're asking them to think about as they think about the next steps in their work. For our group, when we formed and through a series of meetings over a couple of years, they came up with a set of design principles. The first design principle is around access and equity. Again, making sure that we reach all students and that we have include them in everything that we do and think specifically about particularly those students who've not been served previously. And particularly in STEM, if you look at the national statistics, you can see there are huge gaps in both access and achievement. We looked at, when I was with the Business Higher Education Forum, we looked at some of this data. ACT does some really interesting data nationally about students' proficiency as it relates to whether or not they're ready for college, but they also capture interest information about what kinds of things they're interested in doing in terms of majors and careers when they go on. They capture this information in 8th grade, 10th grade, 12th grade. It stays pretty stable over time. But we noticed that there are large gaps between those areas, between white and Asian students and Black and Hispanic students in particular. We also see there's a huge mismatch in terms of what students are good at doing and what they're actually interested in doing. So if you take a Latin square, for example, students who are proficient in math as the primary gatekeeper in terms of STEM majors and careers, and then you look at this ACT data in terms of what they're interested in doing, you'd think, right, the kids who are really good in math, or at least are on a path to be college ready, would have pretty high interest in STEM disciplines or math-based disciplines. But there's a huge disjuncture. Actually, the ACT national data found only 17% of their high school seniors that took the test, and this is about 1 million students that take it annually, were both proficient in math, or basically college ready in math, and interested in STEM majors or careers. 17%. That's a really small number. But there were students, on the other hand, that were very interested in STEM careers, but weren't ready, anywhere near ready, in the math area, the necessary precursor. And vice versa, you had students that were on the pathway, they were ready to do college level math, but had no interest in STEM. So the kinds of things that we're talking about today I think are really interesting, because we talked a lot about how do we connect and make real for kids what STEM means. We have our school day. There's a whole lot of issues around how we teach STEM, and that's one of the things that we're going to work on as a network. But the out-of-school time is a perfect opportunity, I think, to really help bring that reality, that relevancy, that excitement to kids about what it means to do STEM.